The evening rush at Silver Spoon Restaurant was in full swing. The clinking of glasses mixed with the hum of conversation as customers enjoyed their meals in the heart of downtown. Among the busy servers moving between tables was Lily, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her steps quick but careful as she balanced 3 plates along her arm. At 28, Lily wasn't where she had planned to be in life. 6 years of working double shifts had left small lines around her eyes that made her look older when she was tired. And tonight she was exhausted. "Table 12 needs more bread," called out Hector, the head chef, his voice barely rising above the kitchen noise. "On it," Lily replied, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. She grabbed a fresh basket and headed back to the dining area, weaving between tables with practiced ease. Silver Spoon wasn't just any restaurant. With its crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, it was where the city's wealthy came to see and be seen. Lily knew most of the regular customers by name, their likes and dislikes, which ones tipped well and which ones complained. No matter how perfect the service, what none of them knew about her was that beneath her pleasant server smile was a woman who once had very different dreams. As she refilled water glasses at table 9, her mind wandered to the stack of textbooks waiting for her at home. Night classes in business management weren't cheap, and neither was rent in the city. The tips from tonight would help with the electric bill that was already 2 weeks overdue. "Miss, we're ready to order," called a woman from table 15, snapping Lily back to reality. "Of course," she said, pulling out her notepad. "What can I get for you tonight?" The night continued like this, taking orders, delivering food, clearing dishes, the same routine she'd followed thousands of times before. It wasn't until nearly 9 o'clock that Hector poked his head out from the kitchen. "Lily, private party coming in." Mr. Reynolds made a last-minute booking for the back room. "Tony wants you to handle it." Lily's heart sank. She was supposed to be off at 10, giving her just enough time to review for tomorrow's exam. But refusing wasn't an option. Tony, the restaurant manager, had made it clear that private parties meant better tips, and better tips meant keeping your job. "How many people?" she asked, already reaching for more rolled silverware. "Just 4. "But it's James Reynolds," Lily froze. Everyone in the restaurant business knew that name. James Reynolds had built a tech empire from nothing, turning a small startup into a global company worth billions. His face was on business magazines and tech blogs. He was known for being particular about everything, and generous when pleased. "Got it," she nodded, straightening her uniform. The back room was the restaurant's most exclusive space, with just one large round table and windows overlooking the city lights. Lily prepared it quickly, making sure everything was perfect. The crystal glasses spotless, the candles lit, the temperature just right. At 9:30 sharp, the small group arrived. James Reynolds was instantly recognizable, though shorter than Lily had imagined. In his mid-40s, he had a trim beard peppered with gray and wore a simple dark suit that probably cost more than Lily's rent for 6 months. With him were 3 other business types, all men in expensive watches and power ties. "Good evening, gentlemen," Lily greeted them with her professional smile. "Welcome to Silver Spoon. My name is Lily, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Reynolds barely looked at her as he took his seat, immediately launching into conversation with his companions about some new technology platform. Lily poured water and waited patiently until there was a break in the conversation. "May I tell you about our specials this evening?" she asked. For the next 2 hours, Lily served the 4 men with careful attention. They ordered expensive wine and discussed business deals that involved millions of dollars. She moved quietly around them, refilling glasses and bringing new courses, trying to be invisible while still anticipating their needs. During dessert, the conversation turned to a new acquisition. As Lily placed a plate of chocolate souffle in front of Reynolds, she found herself humming softly, an old habit when she was tired. It was a melody that had been stuck in her head for days, something she'd heard on the radio that reminded her of pieces she once played. "That's Rachmaninoff," Reynolds said suddenly, looking directly at her for the first time that evening. Lily stopped, embarrassed. "I'm sorry?" "What you were humming. Prelude in C-sharp minor. Rachmaninoff." His eyes, sharp and assessing, studied her face. Not many people would recognize that, let alone hum it correctly. Caught off guard, Lily felt her professional mask slip. "You know classical music?" One of the other men laughed. "James doesn't just know it. His foundation funds half the symphonies in the country. Reynolds waved this away, still watching Lily. You play? There was something in his direct question that made lying impossible. I used to, piano, a long time ago. How long? Almost 10 years now. Lily shifted uncomfortably, aware that the other men at the table were now looking at her too. This wasn't part of her job, sharing personal details with customers. But Reynolds had a way of asking questions that seemed to demand honest answers. Why did you stop? He asked. Lily hesitated. The real answer was too personal, too painful to share with strangers. Life happened, she said simply. I should check if you need anything else with your dessert. But Reynolds wasn't finished. You were trained, though. I can tell by how you hummed the piece. The phrasing was too precise for someone who just enjoys listening. Something about his interest made Lily feel both seen and exposed. For a brief moment, she forgot she was a server talking to a billionaire customer. I had a scholarship to the state music school, she admitted. I left during my second year. What a waste, said one of the other men, not unkindly, but with the casual dismissiveness of someone who had never had to choose between dreams and survival. Reynolds shot the man a look that silenced him immediately. Life's complications rarely mean the end of talent, he said. Only its redirection. The conversation moved on, but Lily felt Reynolds watching her as she cleared the dessert plates. When the group finally prepared to leave around midnight, he handed her his credit card without looking at the bill. Add 30% for gratuity, he said. Thank you, sir, Lily replied, relief washing over her. That would cover her electric bill and then some. When she returned with the receipt, Reynolds signed it quickly. As he stood to leave, he paused. The piano in the front of the restaurant, is it just for show or does it work? Lily glanced toward the main dining room where an old grand piano sat in the corner, more of a decorative piece than anything else. It works, I think. The owner had it tuned last Christmas when they had someone playing holiday songs. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. Interesting. Without another word, he joined his companions and left. After they were gone, Lily quickly cleaned the private room, her mind already shifting to her upcoming exam. It wasn't until she was counting her tips at the end of her shift that Tony approached her. How did it go with the Reynolds party? He asked. Fine, Lily said. They seemed happy. Tony looked strangely excited. Reynolds just called the owner directly. Wanted to know if you work tomorrow night. Lily frowned. I'm not on the schedule. I have class. Well, you are now, Tony said. Owner's orders. Reynolds specifically asked for you. Said he's coming back, just him this time. He lowered his voice. Reynolds is a major investor in several restaurant groups. If he likes us, it could mean big things for Silver Spoon. Lily thought about her exam, about the night's worth of studying she'd have to sacrifice, but she also thought about her overdue bills and the textbooks she needed for next semester. Okay, she sighed. What time? As she left the restaurant that night, Lily found herself looking at the old piano in the corner. In the dim after-hours lighting, it seemed to watch her back, like an old friend she'd abandoned long ago. For a brief moment, she felt the phantom sensation of keys beneath her, fingers, a feeling she had forced herself to forget for nearly a decade. Something about the way Reynolds had recognized the piece she was humming had stirred memories she'd kept locked away. As she stepped out into the cool night air, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow's shift would somehow be different from all the thousands that had come before. What she didn't know was just how different it would be, and how one conversation with a billionaire was about to change the course of her life forever. The next evening, Lily arrived at Silver Spoon an hour early. She hadn't slept well, her mind replaying the strange interaction with James Reynolds. After rescheduling her exam and calling in a favor from a classmate to get notes, she'd spent the morning wondering what a billionaire tech mogul could possibly want with a waitress who once played piano. Tony greeted her at the door with unusual enthusiasm. He's already here, he whispered, nodding toward the back of the restaurant. Been waiting 20 minutes. Didn't even want a drink. Lily glanced past him. Unlike yesterday, Reynolds was alone, sitting at a small table near the old piano rather than in the private room. He wore a casual sweater instead of a business suit, making him look almost ordinary if you ignored the expensive watch on his wrist. What does he want? Lily asked. Tony shrugged. No idea. But whatever it is, just say yes. The owner's already called twice to check if you're here. With a deep breath, Lily walked across the restaurant. Reynolds looked up from his phone as she approached, his expression unreadable. "Good evening, Mr. Reynolds," she said, professional smile in place. "I'm told you asked for me specifically." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit down, please." It felt strange sitting with a customer, but Lily complied. Up close, she noticed the fine lines around his eyes, signs of someone who spent too many hours working and too few sleeping. "I'm sure you're wondering why I came back," he said without preamble. "The thought crossed my mind," Lily admitted. Reynolds tapped his fingers on the table, a rhythm that Lily recognized as the opening bars of the very piece she'd been humming the night before. "I've built my fortune recognizing untapped potential," he said. "In technology, in markets, in people. It's a skill that served me well." He paused, studying her face. "Last night I heard something in your humming that caught my attention." Lily shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Reynolds, I appreciate the interest, but I'm just a waitress now." "Whatever you think you heard, what made you quit?" he interrupted. "The piano, I mean." The directness of his question caught her off guard. Customers rarely asked about her life, and when they did, she deflected with practiced ease. But something about Reynolds' intensity made her hesitate to offer her usual vague responses. "My father got sick," she said finally. "Cancer. I was his only family, so I came home to take care of him. Medical bills piled up. The scholarship covered tuition, but not living expenses." She shrugged, trying to make light of what had been the most painful period of her life. "By the time he passed, I was in debt. Music school seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford anymore." Reynolds nodded as if her answer confirmed something he'd already suspected. "And now?" "Now I work doubles to pay rent and take night classes in business management," Lily said. "It's practical. But you still hear the music," he said. It wasn't a question. Lily felt a surprising sting of tears and blinked them away quickly. "Sometimes," she admitted. "What does this have to do with anything, Mr. Reynolds?" He leaned forward. "I have a proposition for you." Before he could continue, they were interrupted by the restaurant owner himself, a man Lily had only seen twice in all her years working there. Walter Chen was short, balding, and perpetually anxious, especially now, hovering at their table with a nervous smile. "Mr. Reynolds, such an honor to have you back. Is everything to your satisfaction?"
Can I get you anything?
Reynolds barely glanced at him. "Actually, yes. I'd like to discuss your piano." Chen looked confused. "The piano? It's just decoration, really. We had it tuned last Christmas, but I'd like to use it," Reynolds cut in. "Or rather, Lily here would." Both Lily and Chen stared at him in surprise. "I don't understand," Chen said. Reynolds smiled for the first time that evening. "Let me explain. I run a charitable foundation that supports the arts. Each year we host a gala that raises millions for music education. It's attended by the most influential people in the city, many of whom, I imagine, dine here regularly." Chen nodded eagerly, clearly seeing where this might be heading. "In 3 months, we'll host this year's gala," Reynolds continued. "I'm proposing that Lily perform as our featured pianist." Lily nearly choked. "What?" "Mr. Reynolds, I haven't played seriously in almost 10 years. Which is why you'll need to practice," he said calmly. "Daily. I suggest before your shifts when the restaurant is quiet. I'll arrange for a teacher, one of the best in the city." Chen's eyes widened. "You want her to practice?" "Here, precisely. Your restaurant will be mentioned in all our promotional materials, of course. Rising talent discovered at Silver Spoon. That sort of thing. The publicity alone would be worth thousands." While Chen processed this unexpected opportunity, Lily tried to make sense of what was happening. "Why me?" she asked. "There are hundreds of trained pianists in this city who didn't abandon their education." Reynolds turned back to her. "But they're not you." There was something in his voice, not pity, but a certainty that made Lily uncomfortable, as if he knew something about her that she didn't know herself. "I can't accept this," she said, though part of her, a part she'd silenced years ago, was already imagining how it would feel to play again. "It's too much." "I'm not offering charity," Reynolds said, reading her thoughts. "This is an investment. I expect a return." "What kind of return?" "Excellence," he said simply. "I don't care if you make mistakes. I don't even care if the critics hate your performance. But I need to know you'll commit completely for the next 3 months. No half measures." Lily glanced at Chen, who was nodding enthusiastically, clearly already counting the free publicity. Then she looked at the old piano in the corner. From where she sat, she could see a thin layer of dust on its lid, the slight discoloration of keys that hadn't been touched in months. "What if I fail?" she asked quietly. "Then you fail." Reynolds shrugged. "You go back to waiting tables and taking business classes, but you'll have failed trying, which is more than most people ever do." There was silence as Lily weighed her options. The practical part of her brain listed all the reasons this was a bad idea. Her schedule was already full. She was years out of practice. The humiliation if she crashed and burned would be public and complete. But beneath that voice was another, almost forgotten one. The voice of the girl who once sat at a piano for hours, losing track of time as her fingers found their way through complicated pieces. The girl who felt most alive when music flowed through her. "When would I start?" she asked finally. Reynolds smiled, recognizing the acceptance in her question. "Tomorrow. Your teacher will meet you here at 9 in the morning. I work at 11. I've already spoken with your manager. Your schedule has been adjusted to accommodate daily practice. You'll work evenings only, with Mondays off completely for extra rehearsal." Lily raised an eyebrow. "You were pretty confident I'd say yes." "I calculated the odds," Reynolds said, standing up. He pulled out a business card and placed it on the table. "This has my private number. Your teacher's name is Vivian Park. She's expecting you tomorrow." As he turned to leave, Lily called after him. "You still haven't told me why you're doing this." Reynolds paused. For a moment, something like sadness crossed his face. "Let's just say I understand what it means to set aside a passion for practical concerns. It's a common enough story." He glanced at the piano. "But some stories deserve a different ending." After he left, Lily sat alone, staring at the elegant business card in her hand. Chen hovered nearby, clearly bursting with questions, but she barely noticed him. Eventually, she stood and walked slowly to the piano. Hesitantly, she lifted the cover and ran her fingers over the keys without pressing down. The smooth ivory felt both foreign and achingly familiar, like revisiting a childhood home. She pressed one key, then another. The notes hung in the air, slightly out of tune but clear. Her fingers remembered a simple melody, the first piece she'd ever mastered as a child. Rusty but muscle memory intact, she played a few bars before stopping abruptly, aware of the staff watching. Later that night, after her shift ended, Lily sat in her tiny apartment looking at apartment listings on her laptop. Her rent was due to increase next month, making it almost impossible to keep up with both housing and tuition. The practical solution was to find a roommate or move to a cheaper neighborhood further from school. Instead, she found herself closing the laptop and reaching for her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. Her old piano teacher from before college. The woman who had helped her secure her scholarship in the first place. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "Mrs. Wilson? It's Lily Chen. I hope I'm not calling too late." She took a deep breath. "Something strange happened today, and I think I might be playing again." As she explained the bizarre turn of events, Lily felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a nervous flutter of excitement, the kind she used to feel before recitals. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Tomorrow morning she would sit at a piano with purpose for the first time in nearly a decade. The thought filled her with equal parts dread and longing. She had no idea if her fingers would remember what to do, if her mind could still read music, if her heart could risk loving something she had forced herself to abandon. What she did know was that James Reynolds had offered her a chance that made no logical sense, and against all better judgment, she had taken it. At exactly 9 the next morning, Lily stood nervously in front of Silver Spoon. The restaurant wouldn't open for another 2 hours, but Walter Chen had given her a key, along with a lengthy speech about the amazing opportunity she'd been given and how it would benefit them all. She unlocked the door and stepped into the silent dining room. Without the usual bustle of customers and staff, the space felt larger, almost intimidating. The morning light streamed through the windows, highlighting dust motes dancing in the air and landing directly on the old piano in the corner. Lily approached it slowly, running her hand over the polished wood. Someone had cleaned it overnight, removing the thin layer of dust that had accumulated over months of neglect. "It's a Steinway, you know." Lily jumped at the voice. A small woman with silver-streaked black hair stood in the doorway, dressed in an elegant pantsuit and carrying a leather bag. Despite her size, she commanded attention, her posture impeccable, her gaze sharp and assessing. "You must be Vivian Park," Lily said. The woman nodded once. "And you're the waitress James is so fascinated by." She walked forward, extending a hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "He says you have potential. We'll see." There was nothing warm in her tone, and Lily felt her nervousness increase. "I should warn you, I haven't played seriously in almost 10 years. "Then we've wasted the first minute of our lesson discussing the obvious," Vivian replied. "Sit." For the next hour, Vivian assessed everything from Lily's posture to her hand position. She didn't ask Lily to play anything significant, just scales and basic exercises. The simplicity was humiliating, like being sent back to childhood lessons, but Lily soon understood why. Her fingers, once nimble, now felt clumsy and stiff. By the end of the hour, they ached as if she'd been lifting weights. "Your technique is sloppy, your timing is inconsistent, and your hands have lost their strength," Vivian announced when they finished. "But your ear is still good and you haven't forgotten the fundamentals." "So there's hope?" Lily asked, flexing her sore fingers. Vivian's expression remained neutral. "There's work. A lot of it." She pulled sheet music from her bag. 3 hours of practice daily minimum. Exercises in the morning, repertoire in the afternoon. "I'll see you 3 times a week, but I expect you to work harder when I'm not here than when I am." Lily stared at the pages. The notes blurred together, far more complex than the simple exercises they'd just done. "This seems advanced." "It's what you'll perform at the gala." Vivian checked her watch. "I have another student now. Tomorrow, same time. Ice your hands tonight, they'll hurt worse tomorrow." After Vivian left, Lily remained at the piano, stunned by the magnitude of what she'd agreed to do. The piece Vivian had given her was technically challenging even for someone in practice. For her, it seemed impossible. She was still sitting there when Tony arrived to open the restaurant. "How'd it go?" he asked, turning on lights. "I think I've made a huge mistake," Lily admitted. Tony laughed. "Probably. But hey, you're getting paid to make it, right?" Actually, no, Lily realized. Reynolds never mentioned payment. This became a moot point an hour later when a courier delivered an envelope addressed to her. Inside was a bank card with a note. "For expenses related to your training, transportation, appropriate concert attire, etc. Consider it an advance on your performance fee." And when Lily checked the balance later, she nearly dropped the card. It contained more money than she made in 3 months of double shifts. The days that followed fell into a grueling pattern. Mornings with Vivian, who never praised and frequently criticized. Afternoons practicing alone, fighting through frustration and physical pain. Evenings waiting tables, her fingers sometimes so stiff she dropped glasses. Earning glares from Tony and concerned looks from regular customers who noticed the change. After 2 weeks, Lily seriously considered quitting. She sat at the piano one morning, staring at a passage she'd practiced for hours without improvement, and felt tears of frustration building. The restaurant would open soon. Her shift would start. The cycle would continue, with nothing to show for it but sore hands and wounded pride. "It doesn't get easier," a voice said behind her. "You just get stronger." She turned to find James Reynolds watching from a nearby table. She hadn't heard him come in. "Are you checking on your investment?" she asked, too tired to be polite. He smiled slightly. "How's it going?" "Terrible." Lily flexed her fingers, wincing. "I'm not the person I was 10 years ago. Maybe I never was as good as I thought." Reynolds moved closer, leaning against the piano. "Vivian says you're making progress." Lily snorted. Vivian thinks saying "not entirely awful today" counts as high praise. It does, coming from her. He nodded toward the sheet music. "Play it for me." "Trust me, you don't want to hear it. I'm not asking as a music critic. I'm asking as the person funding this project." Put that way, Lily could hardly refuse. With a deep breath, she positioned her hands and began to play. She made it through the first page before fumbling a difficult section, her fingers tangling on notes that should have flowed smoothly. She stopped, embarrassed. "Sorry, I..." "Keep going," Reynolds said quietly. Lily hesitated, then continued. She made more mistakes, cringed through transitions that should have been elegant, and finally reached the end of the piece feeling like she'd run a marathon. She expected criticism or perhaps polite encouragement. Instead, Reynolds asked, "What do you hear when you play?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "When you play this piece, what does it make you feel? What story does it tell you?" Lily considered. Honestly, right now it feels like climbing a mountain with the wrong shoes. All I can focus on is not falling. Reynolds nodded. That's the technical part. Important but not why people will listen to you. He tapped the piano lightly. This instrument is just a tool. The music, the meaning, comes from you. That's a nice sentiment, but Vivian would say feeling doesn't matter if I can't hit the right notes. Vivian's job is technique. Mine is reminding you why this matters at all. He checked his watch. I have a meeting. But think about what I said. Why did you love playing before life got in the way? After he left, Lily found herself wondering the same thing. That evening, instead of going straight home after her shift, she stayed at the piano. Instead of practicing Vivian's assigned piece, she played simple songs she remembered from childhood, folk tunes, pop songs, fragments of classical pieces that had once brought her joy. Her fingers still fumbled, but without the pressure of perfection. She found moments where the music flowed naturally again. For brief intervals, she forgot about the gala, forgot about Reynolds and Vivian and all their expectations. She just played. The next morning, Vivian noticed the change immediately. You practiced something different last night, she said, watching Lily warm up. Lily tensed, expecting criticism. Just some old pieces I remembered. To her surprise, Vivian nodded approvingly. Good. Technical exercises build strength, but musical memory needs exercise too. She set down new sheet music. We're changing your program. But we've already spent weeks on the other piece, which was a diagnostic tool, not your final performance piece. Vivian pointed to the new music. This will suit you better. Still challenging, but more you. Over the next month, something shifted. The hours at the piano remained long, and Vivian's standards never lowered. But Lily found herself looking forward to practice rather than dreading it. Her fingers grew stronger, muscle memory returning more quickly than she'd expected. The music began to make sense again, not just as notes on a page, but as emotions given form. One evening, lost in practice after closing, she didn't notice the kitchen staff had stopped to listen until they applauded when she finished. Their genuine enthusiasm meant more than any of Vivian's measured approvals. Reynolds appeared irregularly, sometimes sitting silently through an entire practice session, sometimes just popping in to listen to a particular passage. He rarely offered technical advice, focusing instead on questions about interpretation and feeling. Why did she emphasize certain phrases? What story was she trying to tell? Gradually, Lily began to understand what he meant about the piano being just a tool. The notes were important, but they were only the beginning. 6 weeks into her training, Vivian announced, "You're ready for a proper rehearsal. We've reserved the concert hall at the university for Sunday morning." Lily's stomach knotted with anxiety. Playing in an empty restaurant was one thing. A concert hall was entirely different. "Will there be an audience?" she asked. "Just me, James, and the acoustics of a proper space," Vivian replied. "Consider it a dress rehearsal for the dress rehearsal." That Sunday, standing in the wings of the university concert hall, Lily felt like she might be sick. The empty seats stretched before her, somehow more intimidating than if they'd been filled with people. Reynolds sat in the middle row, Vivian beside him with her ever-present notebook. They looked tiny in the vast space. "Whenever you're ready," Reynolds called. Lily walked to the gleaming grand piano at center stage. It was larger and undoubtedly better quality than the one at Silver Spoon. She adjusted the bench, placed her hands on the keys, and took a deep breath. Then she began to play. Later, she wouldn't remember much about that first run-through, just fragments of awareness. The perfect weight of the keys beneath her fingers, the way sound filled the hall differently than the restaurant, the moment halfway through when she stopped thinking about the notes and simply felt the music moving through her. When she finished, there was silence. Then Reynolds stood up. "That," he said, his voice echoing slightly, "is why we're here." Vivian remained seated making notes, but Lily could have sworn she saw the smallest smile on the stern woman's face. For the first time since this strange journey began, Lily allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could actually do this. 2 weeks before the gala, Lily felt like she was finally finding her rhythm. Her shifts at Silver Spoon had been reduced to just 3 evenings a week, giving her more time to practice. Regular customers now associated her with the piano in the corner, sometimes requesting mini performances before the dinner rush began. The restaurant had embraced her story, adding a note to their menus about their resident pianist, who would soon perform at the prestigious Reynolds Foundation Gala. Reservations had increased, with people hoping to hear the waitress everyone was talking about. "You're good for business," Walter Chen told her one evening, actually smiling as he handed her a small bonus. "Maybe after the gala we can work out an arrangement. You play for an hour, then wait tables. Best of both worlds." Lily thanked him, though she wasn't sure what her life would look like after the gala. Her business classes had been put on hold. Her tiny apartment was littered with sheet music instead of textbooks. For the first time in years, she was thinking about music as more than just a lost dream. That Tuesday morning, Lily arrived at the restaurant before dawn. She'd been struggling with a particularly challenging section of her piece and wanted extra practice before Vivian arrived. The sky was just beginning to lighten as she unlocked the door. The restaurant was dark and quiet, chairs still stacked on tables from the night cleaning. She made her way to the piano, set down her bag, and reached for the light switch on the wall. Her foot caught on something, a mop bucket someone had left out. She stumbled forward, trying to catch her balance, but her right hand came down hard against the edge of a table. Pain shot through her wrist. She cried out, cradling her hand against her chest. When she tried to flex her fingers, the pain intensified. "No, no, no," she whispered. "Not now." By the time Vivian arrived an hour later, Lily was sitting at the piano, still holding her wrist, her face pale. "What happened?" Vivian asked sharply. "I fell," Lily explained, showing her swollen wrist. "I tried to ice it, but—" Vivian examined her hand with clinical precision, manipulating the joint and watching Lily's reactions. "Can you play?" Lily placed her right hand on the keys and attempted a simple scale. Pain flared before she reached the fifth note. "Not really," Vivian's expression tightened. "We need to get this looked at immediately." 3 hours later, Lily sat in an urgent care clinic, staring at the brace now immobilizing her wrist. The doctor's words echoed in her head. "Moderate sprain. No piano for at least 3 to 4 weeks. The gala is in 2 weeks," she'd protested. The doctor had shrugged sympathetically. "Playing could cause permanent damage. Your choice, but I strongly advise against it." Now Lily sat in a taxi, heading back to the restaurant where Vivian and Reynolds were waiting. The weight of disappointment was crushing. All those hours of practice, the progress she'd made, the growing belief that she might actually succeed, all of it wiped away by one careless step. When she walked into Silver Spoon, Reynolds was on his phone, pacing near the piano. Vivian sat ramrod straight at a nearby table. They both looked up as she entered. "Well?" Vivian asked. Lily held up her braced wrist. "Sprained. Doctor says no piano for 3 to 4 weeks." Reynolds ended his call. "What's the exact diagnosis?" "Moderate sprain of the right wrist. Grade 2, they called it." Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. "I see. I'm so sorry," Lily said, tears threatening. "I know how much money you've invested in this, and now we adapt," Reynolds interrupted. "Vivian, thoughts?" Vivian crossed her arms. "We could postpone her performance to next year's gala." "No," Reynolds said immediately. "That won't work with our timeline." "What timeline?" Lily asked, confused. Reynolds ignored the question. "Other options?" Vivian frowned. "There's the Samuels piece. It's primarily left-hand. Would she be ready in time?" "Possibly. It's less technically demanding, but that could be an advantage given the circumstances." They discussed her as if she wasn't there. Lily felt a flash of anger breaking through her despair. "Excuse me," she interrupted. "Don't I get a say in this?" They both turned to her, looking surprised. "Of course," Reynolds said. "What do you want to do?" "I want to play the piece we've been working on for months. The one I've finally started to feel in my bones." With one hand, Vivian raised an eyebrow. "No," Lily admitted, "but there must be a way to modify it, adapt it somehow. Maybe simplify the right-hand parts temporarily while I heal." Vivian and Reynolds exchanged looks. "It's possible," Vivian said slowly. "But you'd need to work with a physical therapist to ensure you don't cause further damage, and we'd need to rearrange the piece significantly." "I'll make some calls," Reynolds said, already reaching for his phone. The next morning, Lily found herself in the private office of Dr. Anna Wong, one of the city's top physical therapists who specialized in treating musicians. "James is calling in all his favors," Dr. Wong said with a smile as she gently examined Lily's wrist. "He must believe in you very much. Or he hates wasting money." Lily said. Dr. Wong laughed. Trust me, James doesn't do anything just for money. She wrapped Lily's wrist in a different, less restrictive brace. This will give you support while allowing limited mobility. The key is knowing when to push and when to rest. Over the next 3 days, Lily followed a strict regimen of ice, elevation, gentle stretches, and specialized exercises designed to promote healing without losing all her hard-won muscle memory. Dr. Wong visited daily, adjusting the treatment and monitoring her progress. Meanwhile, Vivian worked on modifying her performance piece, simplifying right-hand passages and redistributing some notes to the left hand where possible. Your left hand will need to compensate, Vivian explained. Fortunately, it's your stronger hand naturally. Many pianists have their dominant hand on the melody, but your left has always had more strength and control. By the end of the week, Lily could play for short periods with her modified brace. The pain was still there but manageable if she took frequent breaks and followed Dr. Wong's recovery protocol religiously. Reynolds appeared less frequently, busy with gala preparations, but when he did visit, he brought surprising guests, other musicians who had overcome physical injuries. Adaptation is part of life, said an older violinist who had retrained herself after a stroke. The music finds a way if you're determined enough. 10 days before the gala, Lily had her final rehearsal at the concert hall. Her wrist still ached, and certain passages remained challenging, but she could play the modified piece from beginning to end. It's not what we originally planned, Vivian admitted after the run-through, but it has heart. Coming from Vivian, this was extraordinary praise. Later that evening, as Lily iced her wrist in her apartment, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Reynolds standing there, looking uncharacteristically casual in jeans and a sweater. "May I come in?" he asked. Lily's tiny studio apartment suddenly felt even smaller. She hastily moved sheet music from the only chair, embarrassed by the cramped space. "Sorry about the mess," she said. "I wasn't expecting visitors." Reynolds glanced around, taking in the second-hand furniture, the tiny kitchenette, the piles of music that had taken over every surface. His expression revealed nothing. "I wanted to talk to you about the gala," he said, sitting down, "and about what comes after." Lily's heart sank. Despite her progress, her injury had changed everything. She braced herself for the letdown. "You're canceling my performance." "Quite the opposite," Reynolds said. "I'm changing it." He explained that instead of being one of several performances that evening, hers would now be the featured solo, the centerpiece of the entire event. "But why?" Lily asked, bewildered. "I'm playing a simplified version with a sprained wrist. Surely there are better musicians you could feature." Reynolds leaned forward. "Do you know why I approached you that first night?" "You said something about recognizing untapped potential." "Yes, but there's more to it." Reynolds was quiet for a moment. "My mother was a concert pianist. Not famous but talented. She taught piano to support us after my father left." Lily was surprised. Reynolds rarely shared personal details. "She never performed publicly after I was born," he continued. "Always said she'd get back to it someday. But then she developed arthritis in her hands. By the time I was in college, she couldn't play at all." He looked at Lily. "She never got her someday." Understanding dawned. "So this is about her?" "It's about the music she never got to share," Reynolds said. "And yes, about the promise I made to her before she died, that I'd help someone else find their way back to music before it was too late." He gestured to her braced wrist. "When you hurt yourself, you could have given up." "Most people would have. But you found another way forward." "With a lot of help," Lily pointed out. "Help you accepted and worked with," Reynolds countered. "That's rare. Most people let pride or fear stop them from adapting." He stood, handing her an envelope. "This is your formal invitation to the gala. As a performer, not waitstaff. There's also information about a music scholarship program at the City Conservatory, full tuition, part-time schedule to accommodate working musicians. Should you be interested?" Lily stared at the envelope. "Why are you doing all this?" Reynolds smiled slightly. "Because 10 years ago, life forced you to choose between what you loved and what you needed. I'm in a position to make sure you never have to make that choice again." After he left, Lily sat holding the envelope for a long time. The path forward wasn't clear or simple. Her wrist would heal eventually, but building a life that included music again would require more than just physical recovery. She thought about the girl she'd been before her father's illness, passionate but untested, and about the woman she'd become, practical, resilient but incomplete. For the first time, she could imagine a future that combined both versions of herself. The night before the gala, Lily returned to Silver Spoon after closing. In the darkened restaurant, she sat at the piano that had changed the course of her life and played her piece one final time. Not the original version or even the modified one, but something new that incorporated elements of both. It wasn't perfect. Her wrist still limited certain movements. But as her fingers moved across the keys, she realized that perfection had never been the point. The music was hers again. Whatever happened tomorrow night, no one could take that away. The evening of the gala arrived with a light spring rain that made the city glimmer under streetlights. Lily stood in a small dressing room backstage at the Grand Hotel Ballroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was barely recognizable, hair elegantly styled, makeup subtle but professional, wearing a midnight blue gown that Reynolds' stylist had selected. On her right wrist, the medical brace had been replaced with a sleeker, custom-designed support that blended with her dress. Dr. Wong had adjusted it that morning, ensuring it provided maximum support while allowing the necessary movement. "How are you feeling?" Vivian asked, entering the room. For once, her stern demeanor had softened. She wore a formal black dress, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a sophisticated updo. "Terrified," Lily admitted. "What if I freeze out there? What if I forget everything?" "You won't," Vivian said with unexpected gentleness. "We've prepared for this. Your body knows what to do even if your mind panics." She handed Lily a small box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a tiny piano charm. "My teacher gave me something similar before my first major performance," Vivian explained. "It's tradition." Lily was touched by the gesture. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Especially after—" She glanced at her wrist. "In 40 years of teaching, I've had many talented students," Vivian said. "But talent is common. Determination like yours is rare." She checked her watch. "It's time." "They're seating the guests now." As they walked through the backstage corridors, Lily could hear the growing buzz of conversation from the ballroom. Peering through a gap in the curtains, she caught glimpses of the crowd, hundreds of people in formal attire, milling around tables decorated with elaborate floral arrangements. The stage held a magnificent grand piano, spotlighted and waiting. The sight made her stomach clench with anxiety. A staff member approached with a headset. "5 minutes, Miss Chen." Lily nodded, trying to control her breathing. This was really happening. After months of practice, pain, and perseverance, she was about to play for the city's elite, business leaders, philanthropists, arts patrons, and critics. She felt a presence beside her and turned to find Reynolds in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. He looked every inch the billionaire tonight, a far cry from the casual visitor who had sat in her tiny apartment days ago. "Nervous?" he asked. "Petrified," she answered honestly. He smiled. "Good, it means you care. What if I disappoint everyone? What if I can't—" "Listen to me," Reynolds interrupted, his voice firm but kind. 3 months ago, you were a waitress who hadn't touched a piano in nearly a decade. Tonight, you're a musician again. Whatever happens out there, you've already won." Before she could respond, the ballroom lights dimmed. A spotlight illuminated a small podium where an elegant older woman began introducing the evening's program. "That's my cue," Reynolds said. "I introduce you next." As he walked away, Lily closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She thought of all the early mornings and late nights at the piano. The frustration, the breakthroughs, the moment when the music began to flow through her again. The injury that nearly ended everything, and the determination that carried her past it. She heard Reynolds' voice through the speakers, thanking donors and explaining the foundation's mission to support arts education. Then his tone changed, becoming more personal. "Tonight's featured performer has a unique story," he said. 3 months ago, I happened to hear her humming a complex piece of music while she served my dinner. She was a waitress who had abandoned her musical education years earlier due to circumstances beyond her control. Lily felt her face warm as she realized he was telling her story to hundreds of strangers. What struck me wasn't just her musical memory, but the emotion behind it, Reynolds continued. Music wasn't just something she once studied. It was something she still carried within her, even when life had taken her in a different direction. He paused, and Lily could feel the audience's attention sharpening. 2 weeks ago, she suffered an injury that could have ended this journey. Instead, she adapted, modified, and persevered. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce to you Lily Chen. The spotlight swung to the side of the stage. Lily took another deep breath and stepped out. The brightness momentarily blinded her as applause filled the room. She couldn't see faces, just the shadowy outline of tables and the gleaming piano waiting at center stage. She walked toward it, concentrating on not tripping in her unfamiliar heels. When she reached the piano, she adjusted the bench, placed her sheet music, and took a moment to settle herself. Her hands trembled slightly, the right one still stiff in its brace. The applause faded to expectant silence. Hundreds of people waited for her to begin. Lily placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes were tentative, her injured wrist limiting her usual fluidity. But as she continued, something shifted. The months of practice took over, muscle memory guiding her fingers where conscious thought might have faltered. She forgot about the audience, the brace, even Reynolds and Vivian watching from the wings. There was only the music, the story she was telling through it. A story of loss and rediscovery, of pain and persistence. When she reached the most technically challenging section, modified to accommodate her injury, she no longer heard what was missing from the original version. Instead, she felt the beauty in this new interpretation, with its unexpected pauses and the prominence of her left hand carrying melodies the right could not. She couldn't see the audience from the stage, but she felt the shift in energy as the piece progressed. The restless rustle of formal wear quieted. The occasional cough or whisper ceased. By the time she approached the final movement, the silence was complete, hundreds of people collectively holding their breath. The final notes lingered in the air, sweet and resonant. For 3 heartbeats after she finished, the silence remained unbroken. Then the applause began. First a few hands, then more, building to a thunderous standing ovation that caught her completely by surprise. As her eyes adjusted to the stage lights, she could see people rising from their seats, faces turned toward her with expressions of wonder and appreciation. In the front row, an elderly man wiped tears from his eyes. Near the back, a young girl watched with undisguised admiration. At a center table, a music critic who had arrived with a skeptical expression now applauded with genuine enthusiasm. Lily stood, bowing awkwardly, overwhelmed by the response. As she straightened, she saw Reynolds at the edge of the stage, beaming with quiet pride. Behind him stood Vivian, who for the first time since they'd met was smiling unreservedly. Later at the reception, Lily was surrounded by guests eager to meet her. Arts directors offered her audition opportunities. A piano instructor asked if she would consider teaching master classes. The dean of the city conservatory discussed the scholarship Reynolds had arranged, outlining a program that would allow her to both study and perform. "You've caused quite a stir," Reynolds said, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed her one. "The foundation has already received calls about sponsoring your continued education." "I don't know what to say," Lily said, still dazed by the evening's events. "Thank you seems inadequate." "Then don't thank me," Reynolds replied. "Just promise you won't give up again." Across the room, Lily spotted Walter Chen from Silver Spoon, invited as a special guest. He was telling anyone who would listen how he had discovered her talent, conveniently forgetting that the piano in his restaurant had gathered dust until Reynolds's intervention. "What happens now?" Lily asked. "With the restaurant, with school, with everything?" Reynolds shrugged. "That's entirely up to you. My part in this story is complete. You're abandoning me?" she teased. "Hardly. The foundation will support your education, and I have a feeling we'll cross paths at many future events." His expression grew serious. "But the hard part, the choice to begin again, that was all you. What you do with this opportunity is also your decision." Later that night, after the last guests had departed, Lily found herself alone on the stage with the piano. In her evening gown, with her hair coming loose and her feet aching from unaccustomed heels, she sat down and played a simple melody, the first piece she had ever learned as a child. The notes danced in the empty ballroom, pure and true. There would be decisions to make tomorrow. About school, about work, about what kind of life she wanted to build now that music was part of it again. But for tonight, it was enough to simply play, feeling the rightness of fingers on keys and the joy of creation.